currently.
All right, now let's get to our second conversation where we'll be speaking to Kane Wanjau, who is the CEO Digitax, joining us on Business Today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's look at this Digitax revolution.
Yes.
First of all, someone who is sitting at home can be asking themselves, what is Digitax? What is it all about?
Yeah, so Digitax is a software solution that is helping companies and organizations and individuals be eTIMS compliant in a simple, quick, and efficient way. So we've built a suite of softwares and products that essentially helps with the transition, with the deadline coming up on 31st March.
Okay.
Yes.
Now that you've mentioned about this and the deadline 31st March,
yes.
When it comes to the deadline,
yes.
What really influenced the 31st of March?
Okay.
And do you think the timeline is really going to help people really get into this?
Yeah, so the deadline is government mandated. The deadline was, or the transition timeline was set by the Kenya Revenue Authority.
Yes.
So as one of the licensed companies that can provide a solution for you to transition to eTIMS, what we've tried to do is think through how we make it as quick and as efficient as possible to transition. So what we've tried to do is think through solutions and offerings that businesses can use to then now make this transition easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. And now, even as we speak about the transition,
yes.
Of course, you've spoken about the system integration in Digitax,
yes.
and now system integration into eTIMS.
Yes.
How does it work, and what is it coming in to solve?
Sure. So the thing about eTIMS is it's designed to help VAT and non-VAT taxpayers transmit information in real time as they generate transactions. Now, the reality of the matter is there are thousands of systems out there. You can think of all the different ERPs, point-of-sale solutions, customized solutions that need to generate a tax invoice as they make a sale. One of the things, of course, about eTIMS is it's now basically a prerequisite for people to pay you. So you start hearing people saying, I'd like a tax invoice to be able to settle your payment. So what we've tried to think of is how do we build solutions and platforms that make it easy to integrate as many solutions out there as possible. We're trying to think of this from a point of view of, cost of change or the effort or the process required to transition. So by building now solutions around Digitax, the idea is to be able to plug in into as many systems as possible so that you can seamlessly communicate with eTIMS. Yeah.
And now, even as you speak about Digitax, it's about digital.
Yes.
And I believe you're collecting data, people's different data from different individuals and putting them together. So when it comes to security and how you're planning to make sure that at least everyone is secured, especially in terms of data, because these days data breaches are all over the place. We have insecurity, especially when it comes to how data is managed on cloud.
Yes.
So therefore, how can you convince someone that this will really work for them, even if it's government controlled, even if it has all these security, can I say, security platforms that are going to make sure that at least they're kept safe. So what is it that can convince someone that this is going to work?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. So when you talk about data protection and data controls, you need to look at it from two angles. First is the technical side. So how you're handling data, are you transporting it in a safe, secure, and encrypted manner, and making sure you've minimized the chance of any data leak or that information getting into the wrong hands. The second aspect is now from a regulatory and legal standpoint. So in Kenya, of course, we're governed by the Data Protection Act. And so what we've done as Digitax is we've gotten both a data controller and data processor license, meaning we've been audited and certified to handle data in the right way. So the way we've looked at it is both from a technical, legal perspective to make sure that any information that's processed at least is following best practice as you manage customer information and taxpayer information. Yeah.
And when you look at flexibility of this particular platform, How flexible is it? Especially when it comes to, you have all this information that is there. So how flexible is it, and how do you make sure that at least it sorts each and every person?
Yeah, so we've built a couple of solutions that enable you to choose which one works best for you. Of course, for many businesses, they would like to continue using the existing systems.
Yes.
So we've built integration capabilities such that as long as your system can communicate with any other external system, we're then able to provide you with the integration capabilities. If you, for example, need something else, so for example, you are maybe transitioning from generating invoices manually, you can do that through our online portal. You can also do that through our mobile application. So we've tried to think of different solutions to serve different market segments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at this other flip side.
Yes.
A business says, okay, it's not a must. I don't want this. I just want, because you mentioned some businesses just like what is there. They don't want to really get to this other side.
Yes.
So what happens at the end of the day? After 31st of March,
Yes.
what are we looking at in terms of businesses that have not really embraced this or come into this particular kind of platform? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so according to the regulations and the notices that have come out, what we have is a compliance window up to March 31st. What that means is any transaction that you basically generated this year eventually has to be backed by a tax invoice, especially if you want to get any tax deduction against that expense. So what you'll find is many businesses will eventually still transition, because the idea here is for me to sell you something, I need to give you a tax invoice so that you can claim it as an expense. And so you see it becomes almost a self-regulating mechanism, because everyone has to issue every other person a tax invoice, especially if it's a business transaction. So what you'll find is eventually, very shortly, most businesses will look at it and say, I'd rather be compliant and basically make sure I'm able to not only issue tax invoices, but make sure I'm also receiving tax invoices as part of my business process. That's the ideal way for you to now be able to claim all the, I guess, tax deductions you may wish to, based on the regulations that have been published.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So therefore, meaning going forward,
Yes.
almost every business will just have to just embrace this particular thing that you have the tax invoice that is there, and also Digitax. All right. So let's look at innovations that can come in after Digitax. Are we looking at other innovations to just make work easier in terms of this particular industry?
Yeah, I would say yes. The way I think of it personally is tax compliance is something that's there. It's been brought about by the regulations and, of course, the eTIMS platform. Now, I think for businesses, it's asking themselves, what is the data opportunity here? If all my transactions are now being processed and there's a system or there's a way to track and transact, what can I do with this information? So I think there are always two ways to look at these things. I tend to be an optimist. The fact that this is mostly verifiable data, it's good quality data because it's ultimately a tax transaction. How do you then, as a business, take advantage of this and make sure you can use it to maybe streamline your operations, maybe use it to make better informed decisions, especially those who are now basically digitizing their business for the first time. I think there's an opportunity now to use the data they're generating to think about how do I use this information to optimize and improve my business. Yeah.
Right. When you look at technology, especially when it comes to how it operates, there are always challenges, especially when it comes to how the system is. There are system glitches. There are usually something, maybe delays when it comes to how people are bringing in their particular data. So therefore, how are you planning to just solve this particular, especially the system glitches when it comes to times when the system is not really working as it should?
Yeah, thanks. We've taken a deliberate approach on this. So what we've tried to think about is what happens if we're not able to, for example, transmit your transaction. As I mentioned now with now tax invoice, it's essentially a prerequisite to getting paid. So now as Digitax, we've thought about what happens when there's unavailability. Of course, systems being systems, you can't predict what will happen. So we've built in redundancies and basically ways you can still generate transactions, or not even have to continuously send us the same information. There could be maintenance going on, for example, but you still need to trade. The thing about tax invoices is it has to serve a 24/7 economy. So if you have industries like hospitals, which are 24/7 basically, it's asking yourself, okay, how do I ensure that whatever time of day or night you're transacting, how do you build in the redundancies, the business continuity processes that make sure you're still able to transact. So those are some of the things we've tried to think about, so that you don't have to change how you work in order to be able to generate tax invoices efficiently. Yeah.
All right. And lastly, as we still speak about this,
Yes.
when you look at this particular industry and where it's moving to, in terms of Digitax and what it's coming in to do, is it a problem solver? Is it the thing that has been waited for a very long time when it comes to the improving of particular things that are just handled, especially when it comes to tax invoices, when it comes to businesses working with eTIMS?
Yeah, thanks. So when we did our own market assessment, what we quickly realized was there are all these systems, thousands of them, that will need to generate tax invoices in real time. And so the approach we took is, how do we serve as wide possible range of businesses and basically help that transition. So we've thought about how do we make the process easier, simpler, and faster. And then also, how do you support the other business operations around this whole transition? So on one hand, of course, you have the transmission of information, but you also need reports. You need visibility, which transactions have gone through, which ones haven't gone through. What tools, dashboards, analytics can you give stakeholders to enable them just understand? So eTIMS is the successor to TIMS, which was the previous implementation. And the way we've thought about it is, how do you make this process meaningful and basically cost-effective for businesses? So that's the approach we've taken.
All right, thank you so much, Kane Wanjao, right there, speaking to us about Digitax and what it's coming to do in order to solve particular issues, especially when it comes to eTIMS and tax compliance, and how businesses are just making sure that they come up with the tax invoices. So therefore, we're going to look at this one story, and then